Everyone loves a good horror movie. But did you know these terrifying classics are based on gruesome, true stories? Keep watching for undeniable proof that sometimes the truth is much scarier than fiction. Directed by Brian Bertino, The Strangers is a lean and mean slab of horror about three masked strangers who terrorized an estranged couple simply because they happen to be at home. The group determines that the couple is around when one of the members knocks on their door.
Hi.
Hello.
Is Tamara here?
That's all the invitation these invaders need to begin their horrific game of cat and mouse. Chillingly, this actually happened to Bertino when he was a child. Someone knocked on his front door asking for someone who didn't live there. Bertino later learned there was a series of break-ins in his neighborhood around the same time. The robbers would target houses where no one answered the door. He has also said that the film was inspired by the Manson family killings. While Bertino has never corroborated this theory, many viewers also speculate that the film is based on the Ketty murders, an unsolved homicide in which a family of three and a friend were brutally stabbed and beaten to death in their cabin in Ketty, California. Stuart Rosenberg's 1979 film, The Amityville Horror, is based on the 28-day haunting of the Lutz family. In both real life and the film, the previous owners of the Lutz's new home were killed in their beds by their son, Ronald DeFeo, 2 years before the Lutz clan moved in. When Kathy Lutz brought in a priest to bless the home, he heard a voice loudly tell them to leave. Things soon became progressively worse for the family. They smelled foul odors and observed other bizarre activities, and the Lutz family claims the actual events that took place were too horrifying to even discuss. The infamous Ed and Lorraine Warren were even involved in the investigation, refuting claims that the whole thing was fake. The Amityville Horror is still thought to be a hoax due to a lack of evidence, as well as George Lutz's supposed involvement with the occult. Regardless of what is true, it's one scary concept. The film did take some liberties, however, such as having George become completely possessed and pushing him to the brink of committing murders similar to DeFeo's. Ed and Lorraine Warren are known as the con men of the paranormal world, exploiting the desperate for fame and recognition. But in James Wan's The Conjuring franchise, the Warrens became ghost-hunting Catholic superheroes. The second film about the Warrens, The Conjuring 2, is based on the case of the Enfield poltergeist, which tormented a single mother named Peggy Hodgson and her 4 children in their North London home. For 18 months, Hodgson and her family claimed that they saw furniture moving by itself, heard knocks and disembodied voices, and actually levitated. The youngest daughter, Janet, allegedly became possessed by the poltergeist, who spoke through her and told investigators he was the ghost of Bill Wilkins, who had previously died in the house. It wasn't just the Hodgsons who had a brush with the paranormal either. Over 30 people, including journalists, neighbors, and other investigators, witnessed some sort of activity there. However, the Warrens were not as involved in the case as The Conjuring 2 would lead you to believe. In fact, they showed up to the house unannounced and were initially not allowed inside. Regardless, regarding the case, the real-life Ed Warren said, "Those who deal with the supernatural day in and day out know the phenomena are there. There's no doubt about it." Of course, subsequent investigations have suggested Janet and her sister were almost certainly lying about the poltergeist, but it still makes for a pretty good story.
How does it feel to be haunted by a poltergeist?
It's not haunted. Shut up.
Borderland is based on the horrific murders overseen by Adolfo Costanzo, a practitioner of Palo Mayombe, who led a cult he called the Narco-Satanists. In his own twisted practice of Palo Mayombe, an established African religion, Costanzo committed human sacrifice to feed a special cauldron that he believed protected his group from harm or capture. This is because, in addition to cultists, they were also prolific drug traffickers. In total, Costanzo was responsible for 15 confirmed deaths, although it is thought that the number could be much higher. Borderland tells a fictionalized story following actual victim Mark Kilroy, an American student who was kidnapped, tortured, and ritualistically killed to protect the narco-satanists from being apprehended by the police. It also closely follows the rituals and practices of Palo Mayombe, choosing to explain the religion rather than removing it to make the film more palatable for a wider audience. In fact, the inclusion of Palo Mayombe in Borderland makes the film all the more terrifying, as the viewers realize that these are actual traditions that have been practiced in the real world. Ty West's 2013 found-footage film The Sacrament is based on the Jonestown Massacre of 1978, committed by the People's Temple's cult leader Jim Jones at the religion's compound in Guyana. The compound was where Jones fled from the police investigation into his cult, which was being exposed for questionable practices from ex-members. Jonestown, the inspiration for Eden Parish in The Sacrament, was supposed to be a socialist utopia, but actually acted as a front for Jones's mistreatment of his followers. After being investigated by U.S. Representative Leo O'Ryan, a group of defectors asked for help leaving Jonestown. Chaos broke out, and acolytes shot at Ryan's plane to prevent the ex-cultists from returning to the United States. There are no politicians in the Sacrament, but a camera crew does help defectors with their helicopter, which also leads to a shootout. Amidst the shooting, the real Jones forced his parishioners to drink cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. In total, 918 people died in Jonestown. Through the found footage format, The Sacrament adds a new perspective to the well-known story. This isn't a biopic, but a harrowing recreation of what it would be like to live through such an experience. Fire in the Sky is an alien abduction film based on the book The Walton Experience, which was written by Travis Walton, an actual alien abductee. Walton was a logger who, along with his coworkers, discovered a saucer-shaped flying object floating in the woods. He made the questionable decision to approach it and was subsequently brought inside the vessel via a bright beam of light. This was witnessed by his coworkers, who drove away in fear. While in the ship, Walton says he fought small, bald creatures until a human being calmed him down and placed a mask over his face, knocking him out. Walton woke up 5 days later on the side of a highway. Since Walton's memory of the abduction was very hazy, Fire in the Sky screenwriter Tracy Torme took a few artistic liberties to craft an effective horror movie. The prime example is the graphic depiction of Walton's time with the aliens, which includes being trapped on a table by a strange, suffocating membrane and suffering a probing that goes through his eye.
Sid, don't you blame the movies! Movies don't create psychos! Movies make psychos more creative!
Yes, Wes Craven's meta-horror masterpiece Scream is, in fact, based on a true story. Specifically, Scream writer Kevin Williamson was inspired by the Gainesville Ripper, aka Danny Rolling, who killed a total of 8 people in 1990. The Gainesville Ripper first gained notoriety when he broke into several apartments and stabbed 5 students. Rolling's killings were not only violent, though, he also posed the bodies in sexually suggestive positions and carefully staged the crime scenes to create a sense of repulsion in those who found them. He was later charged with a further 3 homicides. One of Rolling's most shocking actions occurred when he realized that he left his wallet at a crime scene. He went back to retrieve it and decided while he was there to decapitate one of his victims and place her head on a shelf. While Rolling's specific crimes don't occur in Scream, Williamson was inspired by this student-focused killing spree to write a story about a killer who taunts young women over the phone. The first Conjuring film centers on a family of 7 who move to a farmhouse full of demons and spirits who torment the family. The story is based on the Perron haunting, which was one of the Warrens' most prominent cases. The Perrons moved into a 14-room farmhouse in 1971 and immediately began experiencing strange phenomena, which started with missing items and escalated to full-on possession. The film is rather true to the real-life events, including the name of the spirit, Bathsheba, who was an actual person who supposedly lived on the property in the mid-1800s. However, Ed Warren did not perform the climactic exorcism in the film. Instead, he conducted a seance, as he did not have permission to perform a sacred rite. William Friedkin's 1973 horror classic, The Exorcist, is often cited as one of the scariest movies of all time. What makes it even scarier is that it's based on the actual exorcism of Roland Doe in 1949. Roland Doe is not the boy's real name, but the one used to protect his family's privacy. While Roland became Reagan for the film, Friedkin said that most of the film's events were actually observed by Doe's family during the possession, as verified by those involved. He also consulted the journals of the priests who performed Doe's exorcism to ensure that he got the details right. Strange things started happening to Doe's family after the death of his aunt Harriet, with whom Doe was very close. As an only child, Doe clung to Harriet, who introduced him to Ouija boards and spiritualism.
You really don't want me to play, huh?
No, I do. Captain Howdy said no.
After her passing, objects would levitate and fly across the room when Doe was nearby. As the possession got worse, a number of exorcisms were performed on Doe. One was halted after Doe ripped a box spring out of a mattress and sliced a priest's arm open. During the final exorcism, strange marks appeared on Doe's body. He broke a priest's nose, and his head reportedly spun around, although that detail was never corroborated. These days, Doe's case is thought to be a fake, merely a case of abuse against a mentally ill teenager. Tobe Hooper's debut film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is a classic horror film about a family of cannibals who prey on young tourists, with the infamous killer Leatherface wearing their skin. This horrifying premise is based on the story of Ed Gein, a killer and grave robber who exhumed the dead bodies of local women, cut off their skin, and wore it. Gein always stole bodies that resembled his mother, with whom he had a very fraught relationship. Hooper took Gein's disturbing actions and turned them into something even more upsetting, adding cannibalism, meat hooks, and chainsaws chainsaws to the mix. Gein was only convicted of 2 killings, so he wasn't a serial killer per se. He was just a deeply disturbed murderer. His crimes didn't just inspire Hooper either. His story was also the basis for Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho and Jonathan Demme's The Silence of the Lambs. The Zodiac killer terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area in the late 60s, killing a confirmed 5 people, though he claimed in cryptic notes to have killed 37. Even more terrifying, he was never caught. David Fincher took that bone-chilling story and adapted it into the 2007 film Zodiac, which documents the lives of the men who became obsessed with trying to solve the case. All of the murders and attempted murders from the film are based on actual events, including the double killing of Darlene Ferrin and Mike Mageau, and the escape of pregnant Kathleen Johns and her baby daughter. Fincher also perfectly captures the obsession that plagued the men involved in tracking him down, as well as the fear that the Zodiac killer spread across the region. While many true crime fans know the ultimate outcome of the investigation, Fincher is still able to ramp up the tension. These men got so close to finding the killer, but ultimately failed, as they found little more than circumstantial evidence. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more SlashFilm videos about your favorite horror movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.